discover the incredible and touching truth of medieval middle-class life in England revealed. In a small medieval town in England, each hammer strike from the forge echoed not just metal but the hopes and dreams of young Thomas, a 22-year-old blacksmith's son. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the modest rooftops, Thomas envisioned a life beyond the soot and grime, one where his hands crafted not only steel but also stories of triumph. He burned with ambition, waiting for the day when he could become a master craftsman, forging not just horseshoes but pieces of art that would transform his family's legacy. Yet as dreams danced in his eyes, reality loomed. The matter of family weighed heavily on his heart. His older brother Edward had returned from battle, a war veteran marked by the horrors of conflict. Dark shadows clouded Edward's once bright spirit, and with each glance exchanged, the bond between the brothers flickered dimly. Where Thomas stood tall, fueled by dreams, Edward was drawn down by burdens. The expectations from their father felt like a chain, heavy and merciless, wrapping around their throats as they fought for each breath. One evening, beneath the flickering glow of torchlight, fervent whispers filled the town square. News swept through the streets like a wildfire. Lord Pembroke was hosting a grand competition for artisans, offering not just glory, but the promise of a better life. Thomas's heart raced at the thought. This was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. He envisioned standing proud among the best, lifting his family from the shackles of poverty, claiming a place where pride was born from skill, not heritage. But doubt grew like an unwelcome weed. As Thomas prepared, he overheard the disparaging tones of townsfolk who scoffed at the notion of a blacksmith's son competing against nobler artisans, their words drowning his resolve in a sea of societal bias and prejudice. The old wounds of inadequacy opened anew, and anxiety clawed at his chest. Could he really step into the arena and face the scorn of those who believed he didn't belong there? He stood at a crossroads. Should he hide like a coward, or step forward with grit and determination? On one hand, whispers of fear echoed in his mind, but on the other, memories of his parents of love and sacrifice ignited a flicker of hope. The image of his mother working tirelessly, hands worn from toil, pushed his resolve. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Thomas decided to forge ahead, a confrontation with Edward erupted, raw and painful. They squared off, each representing a different kind of ambition, a different kind of burden. Edward's resentment spilled like molten metal, revealing scars much deeper than any wound a soldier faced. Thomas felt the weight of his brother's struggle, the conflict of loyalty to family, and the burning desire to be more than what they were told they could be. As their voices rose, so did the stakes. Each word, a strike against the walls they built around themselves, threatened to either unify or drive them apart. Could they find common ground? Could they reclaim not just their bond, but their futures tied to a shared dream? The competition was just days away, but first, they had to navigate the uncharted territory of brotherhood, ambition, and the fear that threatened to consume them both. What awaited them on the other side of this turbulent moment? Only the next sunrise could tell. The first rays of dawn crept through the narrow window of their shared room, casting a soft light on the brothers' faces. Thomas stirred first, tension still wrapped around him like a heavy cloak. His heart pounded in his chest, the words from last night echoing like a distant thunderstorm. Edward lay still, the shadows from the past seemingly clutching him tighter than ever before. Thomas decided to take action. He rose from his straw-filled mattress, heart racing with purpose. As the faint sounds of the town waking filled the air, Thomas moved to prepare for the day ahead. He gathered the tools of his craft, each piece reflecting not just metal but his aspirations. With fresh resolve, he approached the forge, breathing in the familiar sense of coal and iron. As the fire began to crackle, his mind wandered to the competition. It wasn't just about winning a title. It was about breaking free from the narrow confines of expectation. If he succeeded, maybe Edward could position himself away from the dark shadows of war that haunted him. Maybe they could redefine what it meant to be part of this family. Later that morning, Thomas found himself at the market, dodging tales of victories and artistry everywhere he turned. He listened to the artisans, often feeling like an intruder. Their confidence was almost palpable, and yet something inside him stirred. He approached a stall selling a vibrant array of handcrafted goods, each one more exquisite than the last. "Fancy yourself a craftsman, young one?" the stall owner asked, a mixture of curiosity and condescension in his tone. "I'm working on it," Thomas replied, steeling himself against the judgment that was sure to follow. "Best of luck, then," the man smirked, turning away. The word stung, but Thomas remembered the fire of ambition that had burned within him since childhood. He turned back toward the forge, determined to craft something that would silence the doubters. He could almost see at each piece an expression of his spirit, each detail steeped in hard-earned skill. That afternoon, as the sunlight poured unabated into the town square, a gathering crowd reveled in talk of the competition. Thomas' heart raced anew, the buzz fueling his resolve. He had to show them what he was capable of, not just for himself but for Edward too. He could feel his brother's doubts wrapping around him like shackles, tightening with every moment of hesitation. Summoning his courage, Thomas returned to the forge that evening and started working on a unique piece of sword with intricate patterns that told a story of bravery and brotherhood. As he hammered away, sweat beading on his brow, he poured his heart into every strike. With each clang, he hoped to build a bridge to Edward, to mend what had frayed. Through the open door, he spotted Edward in the distance. A hazy figure, leaning against the town well with a forlorn expression, exhaustion etched into his features. The sight tugged at Thomas's heart, a sharp reminder of his brother's struggles. Torn between ambition and family, he realized they both needed to heal. "Edward," Thomas called, his voice louder than the rhythm of his hammer. The war veteran turned, surprise darting across his face. As Edward approached, Thomas took a deep breath, ready to reopen a dialogue buried under years of unspoken pain. "I need you to see what I'm making. Together, we can." But before he could finish, Edward interrupted, his voice cracking like dry wood. "Why do you care what I think? You think just because you've found a spark, it changes everything?" A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of their past. Thomas stood firm, determination battling despair. "It changes everything if you let it." What would Edward reply? Would he accept this chance or turn away again? Thomas felt hope wavering like a flame in the wind, waiting for his brother to make a choice. Edward's gaze flicked away, clouds of doubt swirling behind his eyes. The distance between them felt monumental, as if each unspoken word added weight to the air. Thomas could almost hear the gears in his brother's mind grinding, wrestling with memories that threatened to drown him. "Let it?" Edward's voice trembled, laced with anger and sadness. "You don't get it. I'm not the person I was before, and I don't know if I can be that person again. Maybe you don't have to be, but you can be something new." Thomas stepped closer, a rush of daring pushing him forward. "Look at this. This sword. I'm pouring everything I've got into it. I want to make it for you. For us." The word struck like a hammer against hot iron. Edward's expression shifted, the weight of fear mingling with a flicker of intrigue. He hesitated, then crossed his arms defensively, as if double-checking the barriers he'd built around himself. "Why does it matter so much to you?" he asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. You've got a future, Thomas. You can make a name for yourself. Why bother with me? Because you matter? Thomas exclaimed, the flood of emotion threatening to overflow. You're my brother. We're in this together, whether you want to be or not. I can't just sit by while you hide away. For a heartbeat, silence wove itself tightly around them. Then, as if breaking a spell, Edward chuckled softly, but the laugh lacked warmth. I'm used to the shadows. It's where I found a sort of peace, or maybe it's just complacency. Thomas felt his own heart sink, each beat echoing against the walls that had long held them apart. But it's not a real peace, is it? You're trapped. We can forge a new path, but only if you're willing to pick up the hammer with me. The memory of countless evenings spent in the glow of the forge bubbled to the surface for both brothers. Those had been the moments when nothing else mattered. It had been just them, hammering out dreams on precise strikes of heated steel. Ever think we could build something together again? Thomas said softly, searching for a spark in Edward's eyes. Your strength. My fire. We could make something beautiful. As their gazes locked, something flickered in Edward's demeanor, a hint of a smile, almost fleeting. Just how beautiful are we talking? Let me show you, Thomas urged, his voice steadying. Come back to the forge. I want you to see what it could be like. I won't let you go back to hiding. Edward looked torn, caught in a battle between past pain and a tentative hope. Finally, after what felt like a small eternity, he shifted. Maybe I'll take a look. The tentative agreement was like a breath of fresh air, a flicker of light piercing through heavy clouds. Thomas felt relief wash over him, and with it, renewed determination. Let us get to work then. As they walked side by side back toward the forge, the warmth of possibility filled Thomas' heart. In that moment, he could envision a future where both brothers could rise from the ashes of their struggles, bond rebuilt, and spirits unwavering. Yet, as they approached the forge, a shadow fell across the door. An unexpected figure loomed at the threshold, one that could fracture their fragile connection anew. Thomas' heart sank upon recognizing their father, his hardened expression hinting at long-harbored resentment. Just what do you think you're doing? He barked, voice echoing with authority and disapproval. The air thickened with tension as Thomas and Edward exchanged worried glances. This was a reckoning neither had anticipated, their past crashing back like a wave. Would they find the courage to defend their bond, or would the weight of their father's legacy crush the bright ember of hope before it could ignite? Edward stiffened at the sound of their father's voice, and for a moment, the world around him faded into a blur. Thomas felt an intense pressure building in his chest, a fight-or-flight response igniting as he braced himself for the impending confrontation. This was not just a test of their resolve to forge a new path. It was a blood match in the arena of family. Dad, Thomas began, trying to steady his voice against the tide of memories and emotions threatening to spill forth. Not another word. Their father commanded, his tone sharp enough to cut through steel. You think you can just waltz back to the forge like nothing ever happened? Like these last years of neglect don't exist? Thomas clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. We're trying to move forward. Edward deserves a chance to rebuild himself, to stop hiding from his past. That's enough. Their father's bark echoed off the walls, silencing any rebuttal. The air grew colder, the warmth of possibility dissipating like smoke. You think sympathy will mend what is broken? You think this emotional charade will somehow erase the shame? With each word, Edward shrank further into himself, his walls reassembling around him, brick by brick. That tension Thomas had fought so hard to dissolve now seemed insurmountable. Why don't you see it? Thomas pressed on. He is hurting. We both are. But instead of standing together, you're driving us apart. The latent tension crackled, both brothers caught between their father's relentless barrage and their shared hope. Edward's eyes darted around the forge, betraying the chaos within. "Thomas," he whispered, but the plea hung in the air, just beyond reach. Their father stepped forward, closing the distance, casting a long shadow that obscured the light of the forge. "You want to fritter away your future on him? Is that what you really want?" "Yes," Thomas shouted, temper flaring. "I would rather work side by side with my brother, no matter how lost he feels, than try to earn your approval by shackling him to the past." At the word lost, Edward flinched. The truth struck almost heavy enough to incapacitate him. He felt the weight of disappointment adding layers to his already intertwined suffocation. But there was something in Thomas's defiance that sparked a flicker of rebellion inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Their father's face twisted in disbelief that morphed into rage. "You're a fool, Thomas. Your brother is a wreck. You really think you can save him?" Silence fell again, oppressive and suffocating. "Maybe I can't," Thomas confessed, his voice steadier now, a trace of vulnerability slipping through. "But if I don't try, he'll never have a chance. Isn't that worth fighting for?" Edward's heart raced. Every word Thomas spoke felt like a hammer's blow to the chains binding him. The air thickened with the impending storm. Would their father's anger sever the fragile thread that still connected them? "Stop this madness," their father yelled, erupting with force. "You'll regret it. You'll both regret it." With a sudden clarity, Edward stepped forward, breaking his familiar pattern of retreat. "No, Dad. I won't regret it. Not anymore." Thomas' eyes widened in surprise. Could this be it? The moment he had fought for since the clouds had cast a shadow over his brother's spirit? Their father's expression morphed from fury to confusion, a moment where doubt hung thick like smoke. You're choosing this?" Their father's voice cracked, revealing something deeper underneath a hint of fear. "I am," Edward replied, a new strength coursing through him. And just as it seemed the resolve was beginning to take root, a shattering crash echoed from behind, the unmistakable sound of metal hitting the ground. All eyes turned to see a broken piece of equipment that had slipped from the workbench, a sign that fate wouldn't let them stay still. Not anymore. An unseen force had stirred the troubled waters. As the brothers locked gazes, a new tension ignited. Old loyalties laced with newfound commitments now hung precariously in the balance. What lay ahead was murkier than ever, but something had shifted. Would they weather the storm together, or would this moment of defiance unravel everything in its wake? Edward's heart pounded like a hammer on iron, the noise in his chest drowning out everything else. The clang of metal hitting the floor echoed in the silent forge, shattering the moment that had just begun to reshape their fragile reality. Thomas quickly glanced back at the wreckage, then shifted his focus back to their father. "You can't keep us in this cycle," he urged, determination fluttering in his eyes. "We're done living in fear. We want to build something new." Their father's frown deepened, eyes narrowing like storm clouds ready to erupt. "Building? You think what you're doing is building? You're just setting yourselves up for another fall. When you won't survive this time." Edward felt the weight of his father's harsh words pressing down on him. 1,000 doubts swirled through his mind, but ingrained in that chaos was a faint whisper of hope ignited by Thomas's courage. He clenched his fists, breathing steadying as he spoke. "I refuse to run away from what I can face." "Face what?" The old man laughed bitterly, the sound devoid of any joy. "Face your failures? Your weaknesses? You think that as strength?" "Strength isn't the absence of failure, it's rising from it," Edward said, his voice trembling but resolute. He felt like a phoenix rising from ashes, battling each doubt with a growing fire inside him. "Keep talking, but know this, it won't change anything," their father replied, his voice wavering just slightly. Thomas took a step forward, inching closer to the void between them and their father's wrath. "Maybe it will, Dad. Maybe it's time you let us decide our own futures. His father's fury flared anew, but beneath that emotion was a flicker of concern. There it was, a rift, a cracking facade that might reveal remnants of a softer man. Just as quickly as he felt the pulse of hope, Edward could taste the bitterness of doubt lingering in the air. But then Edward felt something shift inside him. It was a movement of strength, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was a mountain of truth behind those walls of anger. "Dad, we're not asking for your approval to live. We're demanding the right to be who we are." The clash of voices filled the forge, each one resonating with an emotional weight that cooled the heated forge around them. The air felt electrified with resonance, as if something ancient and primal was awakening beneath the surface. For a moment, their father hesitated. His thumb rubbed the back of his hand, a nervous habit he thought he had suppressed long ago. What if this was all a mistake? What if he lost them forever? But the steel core of pride clenched within him, fighting against the cracks emerging in his resolve. "Stop this nonsense!" he shouted one last time, his voice now a desperate echo. "No good will come from this. You're not ready." Edward stepped forward again, how he was unsure. "If we keep hiding from our past, we'll never know our future. This is me, fighting not just for myself but for us." His father broke eye contact, looking down as if the dirt and grime of the forge could offer him answers he had long avoided. The silence that followed was deafening. Above them, tools hung still and silent, witnesses to a confrontation long overdue. Edward held his breath, sharing a lingering moment with his brother filled with uncertainty but shimmering with possibility. Then, almost imperceptibly, their father raised his head, searching their faces. "You think I want to lose you? I think you're losing us trying to hold on to something that can no longer exist," Thomas replied softly, his tone diffusing some of the tension. With that, the world around them felt like it stopped. Could they save the remnants of their family, or would this be the moment that highlighted the wounds that could never heal? And then, the faintest sound drew their attention, a whisper from the machinery, a soft hum that began to stir life back into the silent forge. It was an invitation wrapped in uncertainty and trepidation. Could they find a way to harness that energy, build something together, something that would forge a new path? Or would they watch as the tools and dreams gathered dust while family ties frayed endlessly? What lay ahead was uncertain, but perhaps it was a chance to finally reclaim and reshape their story. Would they step into the light, or retreat back into the shadows of their father's expectations? The mood hung thick in the forge, each breath feeling heavy against the unyielding silence. Edward watched as his father lingered in indecision, the embers of conflict smoldering in his eyes. It was a battle of wills, one that felt too big for the cramped space they occupied. "How can you think this way?" their father finally said, his voice quieter now, the flames of anger flickering down to coals of concern. "You think you know what is best for you." Edward swallowed hard. This was the moment, the breaking point. "We do know, Dad. We've seen the consequences of living in fear. It broke you, and it's breaking us." Thomas, standing beside him like a steadfast shield, nodded. "We want a future built on our own choices, on honesty and strength. We want to build something honest out of the ruins your fear has left us." Their father clenched his jaw, visibly struggling. "Building on failures is no foundation. Building on truth is," Edward shot back, his heart racing. "Truth about who we are, about what we can become. It doesn't matter how many times we stumble. What matters is that we get back up." A flicker of doubt crossed their father's hardened features. "You think you can simply erase the past?" "No," Edward said, taking another step forward, "but we can learn from it. We've spent too long hiding. We deserve a chance to rise." The forge felt warmer, the air thick with tension and possibilities. The machinery around them, once merely a collection of tools, began to pulse with potential. Could they truly reshape their lives? Every time you tried to provide for us, Thomas added, his eyes unwavering, you suffocated us with expectations. Maybe it's time for you to trust us. As they spoke, the whispering hum from the machinery grew steadier, a melody of affirmation echoing their words. It felt alive in a way that made their hearts race with the excitement of new beginnings. Their father's eyes softened for a fleeting moment, but then his defenses came crashing back. You think I want this? You think I wanted to live in a world where my sons don't respect my choices? It's not about respect, it's about growth, Edward replied, desperation rising in his voice. We're becoming men, Dad. We need to forge our own paths, even if they're different from yours. The forge had become more than a space for metalwork. It was where dreams were wrestled to fruition. Suddenly, the memory of laughter and shared stories within these walls flickered, illuminating the shadows that had long settled the kind of warmth they all yearned for but didn't know how to voice. A silence hovered between them, heavy but ripe with unspoken feelings. Each of them stood at a precipice, a leap needed, a choice to be made. The whir of the machines felt like a heartbeat, urging them to decide. And then, with a shuddering breath, their father stepped back, fingers running through his hair. You want this so badly, don't you? Edward looked at his brother, then back at their father. More than anything. The older man's brow furrowed, wrestling with his own past as if wrestling with their future. You think you can change what has been lost? We can try, Dad. Just give us a chance, and this time, let us stand on our own. Their father's flinch indicated the turmoil inside him. What if you fall again? What if it leads to pain? The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. And what if it leads to joy? What if it leads to a new beginning? Thomas ventured, stepping forward to bridge the gap. The air was charged with the weight of that decision. The forge hummed lightly around them, a call to action, to hope. The scene felt dangerously volatile, like the moment before a storm breaks. Edward's heart raced with anticipation. But would they embrace that storm together, or would they let it wash away the chance at healing? The silence was deafening, but deep within, Edward felt the stirrings of something profound. They were on the edge of a new truth, but how fast would they dare to step into it? The atmosphere shifted. The forge, which had felt like a prison moments before, now buzzed with a tantalizing tension, like the slow drawing back of a bowstring. Edward saw it in his father's eyes, uncertainty flickering like shifting shadows across the embers. Do you truly believe you can succeed? Their father asked, his voice barely above a whisper, heavy with doubt and desperation. I know we can, Edward replied, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt that weight pressing down, urging him to prove himself, to show his father they were ready to forge their own destinies. Thomas, his voice steadier than a rock, spoke again. This isn't just about us, Dad. It's also about you. We want you to find peace too. Living in fear hasn't helped anyone. The older man's eyes faltered, the walls he'd built seeming to crack ever so slightly. There was a flicker in the room, a glimmer of possibility. But then, with a drawn-out sigh, their father shook his head. You think it's that simple? You think pain is just a step on the path to joy? It might be, Edward challenged, feeling a fire ignite within him. Isn't it worth the risk? Isn't it worth finding out what we could become? For an instant, silence swirled, wrapping around them like a fog. The clang of metal on metal from a nearby bench felt distant, almost muted. Edward held his breath, hoping to capture this moment in time, to seal it with the promise of change. Our fear isn't what defines us, Thomas interjected. It's how we rise from it. Together. You taught us that much. Their father's jaw tightened, a skin-deep mask trying to mold itself to face the truth being thrust before him. And if you're wrong? What if this leads only to disappointment? The question hung in the air, heavy and piercing. Edward felt fear creeping in, threatening to overshadow everything they had just fought to say. And what if it leads to everything we've ever dreamed of? Thomas pressed lightly, a hint of rebellion in his voice. Don't you wish that for us too? Finally, their father's shoulders drooped, the fight slowly ebbing away. The tension that lay taut in the room began to loosen, yet a cautious thread of hope lingered between them. I just want to keep you safe, he murmured, barely audible. Edward stepped closer, his voice softer now. We appreciate that, Dad. But safety can't come at the cost of our spirits. We need room to breathe, to find our own way. With those words, a shift happened. The remaining vestiges of anger and fear dissipated like steam in the rising heat of the forge. Minutes felt like hours as Edward watched their father wrestle with his emotions, uncertainty battling against the love he had always carried for his sons. It was a delicate dance, a new beginning woven into the fabric of their shared history. Then, their father took a deep breath, his face unclenching with a flicker of resolve. All right, then. If you're determined to forge your own way, I will support you. Edward's heart soared. This was at the moment they needed, an opening that would let them into the light. But as the words settled, a thought nagged at him. Dad, he hesitated, how do we build this bridge? How do we find trust among each other? The question echoed in the forge, unanswered, hanging above them like the unfinished projects scattered around the space. It was an invitation for growth, a chance to press onward into the unknown. And with that silence lingering, Edward felt the warmth of possibility envelop them all, setting the stage for the real work ahead. Would they rise to build a new legacy, or fall back into the shadow of old fears? The air crackled with anticipation, as they all stood on the precipice, each of them a part of something greater, but first, they would have to find a way across the divide. The forge hummed softly, the warmth wrapping around them like a blanket, but the real heat came from the uncertainty weaving its way through their hearts. Edward felt the weight of his father's whispered question hang in the air, just as palpable as the glow of the coals. This wasn't merely about physical constructs. It was about rebuilding their very souls, an endeavor filled with risk, as well as hope. Building trust means showing each other our true selves, Thomas explained, glancing between their father and Edward. He shifted slightly, trying to embody the strength that he wanted to project. It means stripping away the masks we wear and being honest about our fears and dreams. Their father looked up, his brow furrowing as if Thomas had just thrown a rough stone into calm waters. And what if the truths we uncover hurt more than they heal? Then we face them, Edward said firmly, the words spilling from him, as though the forge itself had ignited his passion. We've been carrying those burdens for too long. It'll be hard work, but we're ready to tackle it together. The room fell silent again, everyone weighing the promise of candor against the ghosts hanging in the corners, memories of terse conversations and tears shed in solitude. The forge's flames flickered, casting dancing shadows that illuminated their faces, revealing their vulnerability. Maybe, the father finally said, his voice low, maybe sharing what each of us feels is the first step. But how do we even begin? It sounded like a confession, almost a pebble tossed into the depths of their emotions. Thomas took a deep breath. Maybe we talk, just like this. No holds barred. We can each share a truth, something we would like to let go of. There was an instant of palpable fear, but it was accompanied by a thrill. Edward nodded, feeling the possibility weave its way through the space between them. I like that idea. It's a chance to open up. We can start with regrets. I'll go first. His heart raced as he prepared to peel back the layers of his own heart. I regret not standing up sooner to challenge the way things were. I didn't want to upset you or cause any fuss. I let fear take the wheel instead of grabbing the reins myself. His father stared at him, something shifting in the depths of his eyes. I never wanted to hold you back. I thought I was protecting you, he confessed, his voice trembling. I know, Edward responded gently, but we need freedom more than we need safety. It's time for all of us to step forward. The father glanced at Thomas, who looked resolute, his own eyes sparkling with determination. I regret not trusting my instincts. I worried too much about pleasing everyone else, and I neglected what I truly wanted. Edward felt a rush of warmth as brother's honesty shed light on the shared struggle. The atmosphere thickened, but it felt less suffocating now. The forge continued its whispering, forging something new in the air, an unspoken understanding quietly enveloping them. "And what do you really want?" Edward asked softly, the question brewing in his thoughts now erupting into the open. Thomas hesitated, eyes darting to their father's face for support or fear. Edward couldn't tell. "I want to be brave. To stand tall without second-guessing myself. Just like you both do." With those words, their father's features softened, the tension of long years loosening its grip. "Then let us be brave together," he murmured, granting permission with a new light in his eyes. The flickering flame seemed to grow brighter, a fresh energy sparking within the three of them, signaling their commitment to transformation. But as the depth of their emotions began to surface, an unsettling thought hung above them. Could they truly change? The moment of honesty felt monumental, but a shadow of doubt loomed. What a shared truths didn't lead to the healing they sought? The forge suddenly felt like a crossroad, with paths branching into the unknown, and they wore the heavy chains of their past. In the charged atmosphere, Edward raised an eyebrow at his father, challenging him without words. "What us next?" he seemed to say, his heart teetering on the brink of hope and fear. What revelations lay ahead as they delved deeper, peeling back layers, one truth at a time? Would they risk disappointment once more, or would they stumble into a new legacy forged together? The forge crackled, embers soaring upward like dreams escaping into the night. Edward could feel the palpable energy of their shared moment, but doubt still lingered, casting a shadow over their intentions. He grabbed a deep breath, willing himself to remain calm. "Let us not waste this opportunity," he urged gently. "What about you, Dad? What truth do you want to share?" Their father's expression morphed from one of apprehension to contemplation. His fingers traced the edge of a worn tool resting on the workbench. Finally, he breathed out a heavy sigh, as if releasing a weight he had long carried. "I regret being so distant. I thought that providing for you both meant keeping my emotions in check. But I shut you out instead." The words hung in the air, striking Edward like a hammer on cold metal. He looked at Thomas, who appeared just as taken aback. It seemed as if a dam had burst, unleashing feelings and truths that had been locked away for years. "Dad," Thomas began, his voice soft but laced with urgency. "You are distant because you didn't care. You shielded us from your pain. We just didn't know it until now." Edward's heart warmed at the realization. They were seeing their father as a whole person, not just a protector but a man with fears and shortcomings, much like their own. "We want to help you carry that, just like you've helped us," Edward affirmed. Their father's gaze shifted, a flicker of gratitude igniting in his eyes. "I didn't think. I didn't want to burden you with my struggles. You both deserve better. But look where that has brought us," Edward replied, the urgency of the moment pressing on him. "We're here now, ready to work through it all. Together. No more silence." As silence settled again, the forge pulsed and crackled. The flames danced playfully, mirroring their emotions as they bared their souls. Each face reflected a growing bond, but also the raw fear of the unknown. A nervousness underpinned Thomas's expression, and Edward knew the weight his brother was preparing to shoulder next. "I think." Thomas hesitated, glancing between Edward and their father. "I think I need to share my biggest fear." "Then do it," Edward encouraged, leaning forward. "I fear that if we truly open up, it'll tear us apart instead of bringing us closer," Thomas admitted. "What if we can't handle the truths we lay bare? What if knowing each other deeply makes us see that we're not as good for each other as we thought?" Edward's heart sank at the thought. What if the journey they were embarking on was fraught with more heartache instead of healing? Their father looked stricken, his brow furrowing deeply. Together we can tackle anything, Edward reassured them. It's not meant to be easy, but that's what makes it real. We owe it to each other to embrace whatever comes next. As tension crackled again, Thomas leaned back, weighing his brother's words. It felt like both a challenge and a promise, an invitation into unknown depths that could either heal or shatter them. And just as quickly as the weight pressed down, a flicker of hope ignited in the room, lifting spirits like the rising smoke from the forge. Then let us go deeper, their father finally said, his voice steadier now. Let us unravel these fears together. But I have one more truth I need to share first. Awaiting the revelation filled the air, and Edward's pulse quickened. What could be revealed in this moment? Would it lead to closer ties, or threaten the very fabric they were trying to weave back together? The fire settled momentarily, but the ember of uncertainty still glowed brightly. As Edward locked eyes with his father, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. What truth could tear them down or forge them anew? The air was thick with anticipation, and the words that would emerge next carried the weight of their shared destiny. Feeling as though the world stood on the edge, the three of them waited for their father's next words, each breath heavier than the last. Just above a whisper, he finally spoke. I regret not being the father you needed growing up. I thought my work and sacrifices were enough, but I see now that they weren't. The confession landed like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples of surprise through Thomas and Edward. Time hung suspended as both brothers processed their father's admission, the truth unearthing their own hard-won revelations. Dad, we never, Thomas started, his voice thick with emotions. But Edward interjected, pushing through the lingering silence. It's more than just the past now. We need to work together to build a future, one where we're all involved. It felt like the cracks were forming, and behind them lay potential triumph. Their father's gaze softened, and for the first time, he seemed to truly see the men his sons had grown into. I was afraid of what vulnerability would do to our family. I thought it would weaken us, he said, sorrow pooling in his eyes. But I see now that it's what could strengthen us. So we take it a step further, don't we? Edward urged, feeling embers of inevitability glow fierce within him. Let us forge something as a family. We can work on it together. That's how we reclaim what we've lost. The atmosphere around them began to shift, a gentle warmth wrapping them in possibilities that felt real. Their father breathed deeply, the tension draining from his shoulders as he glanced at the forge. Can we really do this? A whole new future? Yes. Thomas smiled brightly, feel the flickering joy burst within him. Let us not just talk. Let us create something real. A bond stronger than iron, shaped by our honesty and love. The forge murmured in agreement, its rhythmic pulsing the heartbeat of their family's legacy laid bare. The brothers stepped forward, breaking the invisible chains that had held them down for years. As their father nodded quietly, Thomas extended his hand to Edward, who clasped it tightly. Their father joined them, enveloping their hands in a secure embrace. Let us start with the competition, Thomas suggested, excitement bubbling over. It's not just about winning, we'll work together to show the world what we can create as a family. Our art, our story. Edward's face lit up. And each piece will carry our truths. Every mark we make will be a testament to where we came from, and where we're headed. Their father smiled, the shadows lifting from his past just a little more. Together then, gentlemen. Let us forge not just metal but also a new life. The forge buzzed with activity as they grabbed tools and began working side by side, laughter and the sound of metal ringing filling the air. Each hammer strike resonated not just with craftsmanship, but with love and understanding, rebuilding their once fractured world. Thomas felt the flames inside spark brighter, infused with hope, not only for him or Edward but for the man who had been once lost, now found again. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light around them, they watched their creations emerge, each one glistening under the soft glow, symbols of everything they had fought to reclaim together. Standing shoulder to shoulder, proud of each other, they knew this was just the beginning. A legacy rebuilt with every heartbeat, every truth shared, and every piece crafted side by side. This was the moment they had transformed, not just themselves, but the bond of family forged anew, stronger than steel and enduring as the ages. Remember, if this journey touched your heart, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and amplify these powerful messages. Comment your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. Your thoughts matter. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.